The story begins in the spring of the first year of high school. A boy confesses his feelings to a girl named Nito, asking her to go out with him. To his amazement, she accepts, stating that if he is okay with her, she looks forward to being together. He is certain that a happy future awaits them. However, the things he cherishes most feel distant, shining brightly just out of reach. Lacking the strength and courage to step forward, he eventually realizes he has lost them, leaving him with nothing but regret. Later, standing on a bridge, Nito grips the railing, looking ready to do something terrible, as she whispers a final goodbye to Meguri. 3 years after that confession, Meguri Sakamoto, now a third year at Amanuma High, sits on a bench watching the cherry blossoms fall. He comments that the scene reminds him of the entrance ceremony, making it feel like his school life is looping from beginning to end like a great anime. Beside him, Makato Akutagawa, a second year, laughs and teases him for throwing away a normal high school life. He agrees, admitting that even though he had hopes at first, he never truly committed to clubs or studying. His romance also faded naturally, and all he could do was watch his partner grow distant. Hearing his deep sigh, Makato smiles and tells him that spending her youth with him was not a waste at all. Reaching his hand toward the clouds, Meguri confesses that he truly wished his 3 years had been more exciting. Makato sees through him immediately, asking if he still has feelings for Nito-senpai. When he hesitates, confirming her suspicion, she points out that she is now way out of their league. She reveals that Nito is even scheduled to perform on Kohaku Utagassen, the famous annual music contest, and has bookings overseas. Meguri stares up at the sky, stunned to hear just how far she has reached. He reflects on how incredible Nito was, recalling her popularity and how easily she found success. Comparing her status as a nationally acclaimed musician to his own situation, having failed to get into even his backup university, he feels a bitter contrast. He remarks that she didn't even attend the graduation ceremony, likely because she has ascended to a world far beyond theirs. Makato listens to his self-pity and teasingly notes that he is clearly still hung up on his ex. She advises him to focus on his own path, warning that at this rate, she might end up ahead of him in life. Meguri dismisses the topic and thanks her for her friendship over the past 2 years. Suddenly, a group of girls nearby creates a commotion, staring at their phones in disbelief. Makato searches for the cause and, horrified, shows Meguri a breaking news article. The report states that the singer Nito has disappeared after leaving a suicide note. Meguri is stunned, unable to digest the information. Makato frantically tries to call Nito, hoping it is fake news, but she cannot get through. She asks Meguri what they should do, but he remains silent. Staggering, he walks away, ignoring her calls to wait. He wanders into an empty club room and stands before the piano, lifting its cover. He questions why she would do this when she had achieved her musical dreams and always appeared so happy and smiling. Desperate for answers, he wonders what her smile actually concealed. Meguri begins to play the piano without thinking, realizing he never truly understood Nito. He regrets believing she was untouchable by tragedy and wishes he had noticed the signs earlier, wondering if things could have turned out differently. Listening to him play, Makato comments that he remembers the rhythm perfectly. Meguri admits that out of all of Nito's songs, this one was his favorite and has been stuck in his head. When Makato asks if he still loves her, he confesses that he probably does, as he still cannot get her out of his mind. As he presses the keys, the atmosphere shifts. Suddenly, Meguri finds himself standing outside his high school's entrance ceremony in spring. Before he can process the change, someone bumps into him from behind, apologizing and explaining that the cherry blossoms were so beautiful, they weren't looking where they were going. Chika Nito tucks her hair behind her ear and introduces herself. Meguri is stunned into silence, simply staring at her. When she asks if he is a first-year student too, noting that he seems a bit out of it, he finally snaps back to reality. He confirms his status and introduces himself as Meguri Sakamoto, though internally he is confused, convinced this must be a hallucination of the entrance ceremony from 3 years ago. Chika compliments his name, but she is soon called away by someone else. Waving goodbye, she cheerfully suggests they make the most of their high school years because it will be fun. Watching her leave, Meguri realizes this is the exact moment he fell in love for the first time. Later in the classroom, he questions whether his physical body is actually safe, given how realistic this dream feels. When the teacher calls on him for self-introductions, he recalls his original timeline, where he awkwardly joked about wanting to be reincarnated by a truck, which had stunned the whole class into silence. Determined to avoid that spectacular failure this time, he decides to play it safe. He stands up and simply states that his hobby is stargazing. He sits down, satisfied that this fresh start is much better than his real life, wishing his dream self good luck. He observes the other students, Nishigami stands up to introduce himself. Meguri reflects that in the past, Nishigami thought he was weird, which led to them barely speaking, and Meguri making almost no friends. Finally, Nito stands up. She announces that she has been appointed as the class representative. She expresses her belief that high school is a precious, once-in-a-lifetime experience, and tells the class she is genuinely happy to spend this time with all of them. The class applauds Chika Nito, and Meguri reflects on how amazing she is from the start. To everyone else, she appears friendly, popular with both boys and girls, and almost hero-like. After class ends, Meguri stands before the door to the astronomy club. He steels himself, knowing he is the only one who is aware of Nito's other side. He enters the room to find her completely relaxed, legs propped up on the table, eating snacks and playing video games. Startled by his sudden entrance, she panics, trips, and hits the floor. Meguri rushes over to help her up, asking if she is okay. She apologizes for showing him such a weird side of herself and confirms if he is Meguri. He apologizes for barging in so suddenly. Nito laughs, admitting she is embarrassed because she was trying to keep this unrefined side of her under wraps, joking about her bad luck on the very first day. Meguri smiles, thinking that this interaction feels incredibly realistic. When she asks if he is surprised, he admits he is definitely shocked, noting how different she is here compared to in class. Internally, he categorizes the different versions of her: the mysterious genius musician, the beautiful top-scoring class favorite, and finally, the down-to-earth high school girl standing before him now. He realizes that while they are all the real Nito, this relaxed version in the clubroom is the one he finds easiest to connect with. She stands barefoot and asks if he is planning to join the astronomy club. When he confirms he is, she spins around playfully, admitting she isn't actually into astronomy. She reveals she only joined because her sister, a recent graduate, told her the clubroom was vacant. Meguri points out that he caught her slacking off right as she was settling in. She winks, laughing that she didn't expect anyone to show up on the first day. Seeing this, Meguri thinks that he finally remembers exactly how Nito used to smile. He steps forward, remarking that things don't always go the way one wants. He walks toward the piano and opens the key cover. His tone turns somber as he tells her that back then, he had high hopes to live the best high school life and chase his dreams. But before he knew it, it was all over without him accomplishing anything. Nito is confused by his strange phrasing, asking what he means by saying it was all over. Ignoring her confusion, Meguri begins to play the piano. As she listens to the melody, she suddenly recognizes the song. Meguri remarks that her reaction is exactly what he expected. Convinced this is merely a vivid hallucination, he admits that he is glad to see her one last time. When she asks for clarification, he simply apologizes for being unable to save her. The sensation of the piano keys abruptly snaps him back to reality, where he finds himself crying. Makato notices his state and asks why he spaced out. Wiping his tears, Meguri realizes he is back in the present. He dismisses her concern, insisting he is fine, and grabs a cylindrical object from the table before suggesting they head home. At the school gate, they encounter Nishigami and his friends. Nishigami calls out to Meguri, expressing concern about the news regarding his ex-girlfriend. He is confused, not recalling ever telling them about his relationship. Nishigami pulls him close, reminding him how he used to pester the group for dating advice during their first year, asking about date spots and outfits. The other boys laugh, recalling how annoying his humble bragging was during lunch. Nishigami pats him on the shoulder, offering to lend an ear if he needs support, and the group waves goodbye. Meguri is baffled, knowing that in his original timeline, he barely spoke to Nishigami. Makato realizes something is wrong with her memory. She notes that she used to think he had no friends and ate in the clubroom. She now suddenly remembers him eating lunch with classmates. Meguri wonders if he truly leapt back 3 years into the past. He concludes that, like in sci-fi stories, playing Nito's song on the piano triggered a mysterious power that altered history, explaining the change in Nishigami's attitude and Makato's memories. He asks himself if this means he can save Nito. Returning the object to the table, he determines that the restart of his high school life and his chance to save the girl who drifted away begins now. Later, Meguri sits on a desk as he explains his theory to Makato as she casually sips juice. He believes that if his hypothesis is correct, time travel is possible, meaning they have a chance to save Nito by altering the past. Seeing his intense enthusiasm, she smiles nervously and points out that he tends to get overly wound up about these topics. Meguri apologizes, realizing he momentarily went into full geek mode. Makato remains skeptical, arguing that time travel should be impossible. She suggests a more rational explanation. Perhaps the shock of the recent news caused them both to black out and confuse their memories. While Meguri questions if that is even plausible, She counters that it is certainly more likely than traveling through time. Internally, Meguri acknowledges her logic, but reflects on the scientific risks involved. He considers the butterfly effect, where even the smallest action can lead to massive, unforeseen consequences. He realizes this has already happened. Simply changing his self-introduction allowed him to become friends with Nishigami and his crew, altering his social standing completely. Acknowledging the danger aloud, Meguri stands up with renewed determination. He insists that despite the risks, they might have a real shot at saving Nito, and he refuses to live with any more regrets. Seeing his resolve, Makato sighs and agrees to help in any way she can. Meguri thanks her, calling her a lifesaver. When she asks for the specifics of his plan, he reveals that he intends to revive the astronomy club. Makato recalls that the club was originally disbanded during his first year due to a lack of members. Meguri confirms this, noting that he and Nito were the only members back then, so his first priority is recruiting enough people to keep the club alive. Confused, Makato asks how saving a club will save Nito. He explains that looking back, Nito struggled immensely with the pressure of her music career, especially after her popularity exploded during their second year. He recalls that she eventually became gloomy and isolated in class, giving off a distant vibe. Meguri admits that while her isolation might not be the sole reason for Nito's disappearance, but he believes that truly listening to her and being there for her is the key to changing her fate. He regrets drifting apart in the original timeline and resolves to support her properly this time. Makato smiles and agrees that the plan sounds solid, but points out the obvious prerequisite. None of this matters if they cannot trigger the time slip again. Meguri sits at the piano to recreate the miracle, but as the clock strikes 6 p.m., he struggles to find the rhythm. 30 minutes pass with no results. Makato teases him, asking how he managed to play perfectly yesterday when he seems so terrible at it now. Meguri wonders aloud if his main character buff has worn off, to which Makato dryly retorts that he isn't really the protagonist type and urges him to hurry up. Suddenly, the notes come together. Meguri smiles, realizing he has found the melody, and a flash of light consumes him. He opens his eyes to find Nito standing right in front of him, calling his name. Startled by her proximity, he stammers that he just spaced out, internally confirming he has successfully leaped back 3 years. Nito leans in suspiciously, teasing him that if he was checking her out, she charges 600 yen per second. He laughs at the familiar banter, feeling a wave of nostalgia, but quickly refocuses on his mission. He asks her for the current date. Nito points out that he could just check his phone, but informs him it is April 5th, 2020. Meguri confirms this on his screen, realizing it is the day of the entrance ceremony and that he has picked up exactly where he left off. He mentally solidifies his theory. The trigger is indeed Nito's song. He deduces that he can toggle between the two timelines, advancing them alternately without missing important events in either era. His train of thought is interrupted by Nito calling out to Earth to snap him out of his daydream. Wasting no time, he informs her that to keep the astronomy club operational, they need a total of 4 members. Nito is surprised to learn that even with Meguri joining, they still need to recruit 2 more people. Nito asks Meguri why he decided to join the astronomy club. He reveals that he actually wants to be an astronomer. Opening the curtains to look outside, he shares that this has been his dream since childhood. He recalls a memory of standing on a mountain with his father, marveling at the vastness of the sky. His father had explained that the universe is packed with mysteries and that if one discovers a previously unknown star, they get to name it. Returning to the present, he explains that he wants to discover what lies beyond the distant universe. Internally, he acknowledges that in his previous timeline, he lost sight of this dream while spending every day with Nito, but this time he is determined to become someone worthy of standing by her side. He tells her that he plans to use the club activities as a solid foundation for his serious studies. Nito smiles, telling him she likes people who give their all. She officially decides to join the club and offers to help him find more members. Meguri thanks her, admitting it would be tough on his own. However, Nito has one request. She reveals she dabbles in music and wants to use the room's piano to compose her own original songs. Meguri agrees, pretending this is the first time he is hearing about her musical ambitions. Nito decides to play a song right then to get his thoughts. As she plays, he listens intently, feeling himself tear up at the nostalgic singing voice. Although the song is still a work in progress with some jumbled English lyrics, he feels her raw charm and talent, recognizing the performance of the girl he loves, something he thought he would never hear again. When she finishes, Nito asks how it was. Meguri tells her she is a genius. Surprised by the high praise, she thanks him. They get ready to leave, agreeing to head home. Nito cheerfully suggests they work hard to recruit members, and Meguri smiles, saying he looks forward to working with her. Thus, their mission to save the astronomy club begins. The next day, Nito and Meguri arrive at school early to distribute flyers in a desperate bid to keep the astronomy club alive. While he feels awkward and struggles with the task, Nito returns quickly, asking for another batch. Meguri is impressed by her speed, realizing just how popular she truly is. From behind, a girl approaches and greets Nito by her first name, Chika. The newcomer is Mona Igarashi. She hugs Nito, complaining that she misses walking to school with her in the mornings. Nito apologizes, explaining that she will likely be busy for the rest of the month. Meguri recognizes Monae as the girl from the school gate on graduation day, confirming she is Nito's best friend. As Moan leaves, she waves goodbye to Nito but turns to shoot a menacing glare at Meguri. He staggers back, terrified, wondering what he did to earn such hatred. It dawns on him that depriving her of her morning walk with Nito is likely a bigger deal than he realized. Shortly after, Nito finishes handing out all her flyers and suggests heading to class. Meguri, feeling useless compared to her efficiency, realizes he needs to contribute more to the effort. He asks to speak with her and proposes a new strategy. Together, they work on creating sticker cutouts, inviting students to the club, and place them on every locker. They high-five, hopeful that this new tactic will work. However, 1 week passes, and the club remains empty. Nito asks if anyone is coming, but Meguri admits defeat. Despite their extensive advertising, only 5 people stopped by, and none of them signed up. Deflated, they decide to call it a day and head home. Walking alone, Meguri spirals into worry. He knows that if the club fails, he won't be able to stay by Nito's side for the next 3 years, meaning he will fail to prevent the tragic future. His anxious thoughts are interrupted when he sees Moan standing directly in his path. He attempts to turn around and take a detour to avoid her, but she shouts for him to hold it. She demands to know why he is running away and informs him that she has been waiting for him. Meguri admits that he only ran because she ambushed him. Dismissing his excuse, Moan states that she needs to talk to him. When he questions how she even knows his name, she casually lists her methods, digging through social media and eavesdropping, which leads him to mentally label her not just as a trendy gyaru, but as a stalker. She proves his suspicion by reciting his personal details, including his junior high school, birthday, and blood type. Meguri shouts that her knowledge is creepy, terrified that he is about to be interrogated. Monae then asks to borrow his face for a bit, indicating she wants to go somewhere private to talk. They relocate to a park and sit on the swings. Meguri is nervous and just wants to go home, but Monae begins to open up. She explains that she and Nito have been friends since kindergarten, with their families being close and the two of them sharing classes, sleepovers, and even matching accessories. However, she feels they have been drifting apart lately. She admits she cannot accept that Nito has seemingly ditched her to join the astronomy club instead of hanging out with her like they did in junior high. Meguri asks why she is so obsessed, suggesting that her feelings seem to go deeper than just simple friendship. Monae insists it is complicated and snaps at him when he asks for details. Meguri reasons that he cannot help if he doesn't understand the situation. Conceding the point, she takes a deep breath and decides to tell him the whole story. She recounts her time in kindergarten. Back then, she loved justice-seeking magical heroines, but in reality, she was a bully who stole toys to get attention, deep down knowing she wasn't main character material. Then, Nito appeared and confronted her behavior. They fought constantly, but Nito never backed down. Moan eventually realized that Nito was the heroine she had always wanted to be, sparking a complex mix of jealousy and admiration. She doubts Meguri can understand such a specific feeling, but he assures her he does. He agrees that Nito embodies the ideal person they both wish they could be, citing how students flock to her while he struggles just to hand out flyers. Moan is surprised that he actually relates to her jealousy. Continuing her story, she reveals that they were eventually paired up for a school play. She assumed Nito hated her after all their fighting, but instead, Nito approached her with a smile, suggesting they do their best together. Monae confesses that back then, and even more so now, she simply wanted to be Nito's best friend. Her desire has only grown stronger. She wants to be Nito's number one, to cherish her and be cherished in return. Listening to her, Meguri realizes that Monae is just like him. Both of them are drawn to Nito's brilliance and have become obsessed with her. Seeing this shared struggle, he offers the only solution he can think of. She should just join the astronomy club. Moan hesitates, admitting she has considered it, but she wants to know Meguri's true intentions first. She suspects that despite his hard work saving the club, he might just be doing it to get closer to Nito. He initially attempts to deny it by claiming he genuinely wants to be an astronomer, but under her intense gaze, he falters. He apologizes and confesses the truth. While he does want to be an astronomer, he is currently working this hard specifically because he wants to be with Nito, whom he has liked for a long time. Hearing his honest admission, Monae realizes he is serious. She worries that if she joins, she will only be a nuisance and get in the way of his potential relationship with Nito. She acknowledges that being this dependent is unhealthy and that she needs to learn to be more independent. Meguri is surprised by her self-awareness. Recognizing that she too wants to grow and change, he gently suggests that she doesn't have to leave. Instead, she can find a new type of relationship with Nito by staying by her side in the club. Suddenly, Mon lets go of the swing and grabs his hand, leaving Meguri confused. She tells him that she wishes he were more of a jerk. As she walks away, she explains that if he were an unlikable asshole, she wouldn't have to feel so guilty about potentially standing in the way of his happiness. The next day, Nito is overjoyed to hear the news. She hugs Monae tightly, thrilled that her best friend is joining the astronomy club. Meguri watches them with a smile, though he inwardly notes that they are getting extremely affectionate with one another. When Nito excitedly invites Monae to walk to school together tomorrow, Monae happily agrees. Back in the present, 2023, Meguri sits in a restaurant with Makato, explaining that the scene was so intense he almost became a fan of Yuri, a genre focusing on romantic relationships between women. She asks what on earth he did back there. He reveals that he quietly jumped back to the present to check the results of his actions, but looking around, it does not seem like much in the future has changed yet. Makato confirms that although Monae definitely joined the astronomy club in the past, they still failed to meet the minimum member requirement with only 3 people. Consequently, Nito remains missing in the current timeline. Meguri takes a deep breath and accepts the reality. However, he remains optimistic, certain that the future has indeed changed, even if only slightly. He considers the shift a victory in itself, but acknowledges that they still need to find more members somehow. Makato agrees, noting that they have a long road ahead. Suddenly, a stranger approaches their table and grabs the back of a seat, asking if they have a moment. Meguri wonders who this person is, suspecting from his tone that he might know Nito. His intuition proves correct when the man asks if they just mentioned the name Nito. The stranger sits down at their table and calmly orders a blended coffee from the waitress. Meguri eyes him suspiciously, wondering who this tough guy is. He notices that Makato, usually quite vocal, has become timid and quiet, acting like a shy stray cat. The man addresses them, apologizing for springing this on them, and introduces himself as Rokuo, an alumnus of their high school. Meguri introduces himself as Sakamoto, but as he processes the name, realization strikes. He asks if the man is actually Rokuo Haruki. When Rokuo confirms his identity, Meguri is stunned. Makato quickly nudges Meguri, warning him to watch his tone with such a senior figure. Internally, Meguri understands why Makato is so tense. Rokuo Haruki is a legend, the top dog of the popular crowd, known for being an all-rounder in sports with the brains to match. He was admired by students and teachers alike. Meguri reflects that if Nito was the queen of the school, Rokuo was undoubtedly the king. Meguri begins to ramble about the legends surrounding him, specifically mentioning the Next Level Cultural Festival, where Rokuo served as committee president with Nito as his vice president, a true dream team. Rokuo cuts him off, shouting that his own story isn't important right now. Apologizing, Meguri quiets down. Rokuo takes a sip of his coffee and asks if they knew Nito. Meguri confirms they did. Rokuo presses them, asking if they have any information on what happened to her. Meguri admits they don't know anything beyond what has been reported in the news. Rokuo looks visibly disappointed but explains that he overheard them mentioning her name and couldn't help but intervene, as he is still connected to her in a way and wonders how she is doing. Meguri asks if he believes Nito is still alive. Rokuo admits he has no clue, but confesses that he struggles to accept the narrative. He refuses to believe that she would simply write a will and end everything like that. Later, on the train, Meguri is still buzzing with excitement from meeting the legendary Rokuo Haruki in person. Makato, on the other hand, looks completely drained. She comments that while Meguri seems happy, she is exhausted from the encounter. Meguri laughs, pointing out that she hardly said a word. He looks at his phone, pleased that they exchange contact information with Rokuo to share any potential updates about Nito. Meguri reflects that Nito truly is someone special if she can make even a guy like Rokuo worry this much. The next day, Meguri manages to slip into the club room unnoticed. Makato is already there, peeking cautiously through the closed curtains. She remarks that while his presence is likely fine since he is an alumnus, it is better to be safe than sorry. Meguri downplays the risk, doubting that many juniors, aside from Rokuo, would even remember him. As they sit at the desks, Meguri brings up something that has been bothering him: why Makato is the only person who retains memories of the timeline changes. She agrees that it is strange. He theorizes that it might be due to the observer effect from quantum mechanics. Since she was present with him during the time slip, her observation of the event might have anchored her memories. Makato accepts the explanation, but Meguri decides that talking about theories won't change anything. He moves to the piano, warning her that it might take a while to trigger the leap this time, and asking her to bear with him. She smiles and agrees, though internally she is nervous, fervently hoping that she will remember everything this time as well. Successfully leaping back to the past, Meguri walks down the school corridor feeling exhausted. He realizes that repeating his first year of high school is mentally draining, as he didn't learn much the first time around. He wonders if taking his studies seriously now will alter his future university acceptance when he eventually returns to the present. Arriving at the astronomy club, Meguri sighs, expecting to find Monae and Nito inside. He opens the door to an empty room, though he notices it looks much livelier, or perhaps just messier, than before. Spotting a cute teddy bear on the desk, he reflects that the past is changing slowly but surely, inching him closer to a future where he can save Nito. Suddenly, Nito bursts into the room, shouting that she found him. She excitedly announces that Manase heard her song and emailed her. Meguri is confused by the name, so Monae, following close behind, explains. She reveals that Nito has been raving all morning about Manase, a writer she admires who runs a super popular blog. Monae adds that Manase recommends creators from various genres, and getting featured in Manase's community is a guaranteed path to fame. Nito reveals she has arranged a meeting with Manase, describing her as a beautiful university student, and frets over what to wear. Meguri congratulates her, calling it amazing. Internally, however, the pieces fall into place. He remembers that this is the moment Nito and Manase first hit it off, marking the beginning of their partnership, where Manase eventually becomes Nito's manager. Meguri mentions that he is keen to meet Manase as well. Nito teases him, asking if he has an ulterior motive or a thing for older women. He quickly denies it, but internally he acknowledges the truth. He wants to meet Manase because he knows she will become a pivotal figure in Nito's future. He tells himself that since Monae already knows he likes Nito, he shouldn't worry about the teasing. Refocusing on the mission, he reminds himself that keeping the astronomy club alive is the only way to save Nito. He suggests targeting second-year students for recruitment since they might be looking for new activities. The next day, the three of them stand in the corridor distributing flyers. Nito praises the strategy, but the results are discouraging. Most students decline, stating they are already committed to clubs like baseball. Meguri feels his heart sink, overwhelmed by a sense of being out of place. He finds it ironic that he feels intimidated by these older students, despite having technically graduated high school in his original timeline. He also notices that the girls are struggling. Nito's smile looks forced, and Monae is clearly uncomfortable with the task. Meguri feels a pang of guilt for dragging them into this difficult situation. Suddenly, a teacher with glasses approaches and sternly demands to know what they are doing. Meguri panics, recognizing him as Yamaoka, a pushy physical education teacher he dislikes because he never listens to students. When Meguri explains they are recruiting for a club, Yamaoka scolds them, insisting they should stick to first years. He argues that second-year students are busy studying for exams and shouldn't be bothered. Just then, Rokuo interrupts, greeting the teacher and asking what is happening. Yamaoka complains that the first years are annoying the seniors. Meguri explains that they have already tapped out the first-year market and are desperate for members. When the teacher insists that the seniors are too busy to be disturbed, Rokuo decides to verify that claim. He slides open a classroom window and shouts to the students inside, asking if the first year's recruitment efforts are bothering them. The students reply that they don't mind at all, adding that they actually find the underclassmen cute. Rokuo turns back to the teacher, pointing out that there is no issue. The teacher is visibly displeased but relents, strictly warning them to get back to their classrooms before the morning assembly. Once the teacher leaves, Rokuo turns to the group, asking if he was being too noisy. Meguri quickly denies it, thanking him for the rescue and noting that the teacher is known for not listening. In his relief, Meguri reintroduces himself as Sakamoto and adds that it is nice to see him again. Rokuo pauses, confused, and asks if they have met before. Meguri freezes, realizing he has slipped up. Desperate to cover his tracks, he laughs nervously and claims he must be mistaken. He invents a bizarre excuse, stating that he admires the senior so much that he often imagines having conversations with him in his head. Monae is thoroughly creeped out by the explanation, thinking the situation has become incredibly awkward. Even Meguri winces internally, realizing that acting this weird upon a first meeting is a major turnoff. However, Rokuo bursts out laughing. He calls out the obvious lie, but admits he finds the situation hilarious. Grinning, Rokuo asks which club they represent. When Meguri answers that it is the astronomy club, Rokuo realizes that for them to be recruiting second years, they must be truly desperate. He promises to talk to some people he knows and waves goodbye, wishing them luck. The trio is amazed by how easygoing he was, but the impact of his influence is immediate. Soon, students begin opening the club room door, asking to check the place out and looking specifically for Sakamoto. Meguri, Nito, and Monae are stunned to see the Rokuo effect in action, wondering if this surge in interest will finally help them secure the necessary members. Later that day, Nito invites the group to her room. Monae and Meguri are amazed, but for very different reasons. Meguri is stunned to find the room is a complete disaster, with garbage and clothes scattered everywhere. Nito casually mentions that it might be a bit cramped and invites them to make themselves at home. She adds that her family is out, but warns Meguri not to get any funny ideas. He struggles to reconcile the school's top beauty with this mess, wondering if it is a prank. However, Nito simply kicks a pile of clothes aside to clear a seating area, proving she is dead serious. They settle in for the club's first strategy meeting. Moan sarcastically asks if anyone signed up. Meguri admits that despite their best efforts, the recruitment of second years ended in failure. Most were too busy with existing plans to join a new club. Nito mentions one guy who offered to join as a ghost member just to get their line eyed, but Moan immediately identifies him as the guy with dyed hair and flatly rejects the idea. After the meeting, Monae and Meguri walk home together. Monae asks him to be honest about whether seeing Nito's messy room killed his crush. Meguri smiles, admitting that he actually likes her more now because seeing the real her makes him understand her better. Moan calls him gross, accusing him of having a fetish for messy rooms, but eventually concedes that his acceptance is better than being turned off by it. The following day, Meguri arrives at the club room late due to class duty. He is shocked to find Rokuo waiting there. The senior explains that he dropped by to see how things were going, so Meguri, Nito, and Monae fill him in on their struggle. Rokuo feels responsible for the lack of sign-ups, apologizing for making them go through the trouble for nothing. Meguri quickly reassures him, insisting that without his help, they wouldn't have even had the chance to speak to the second years. He admits they are still short on members, but declares his resolve to keep plugging away until the very last minute, even if it means crawling on the ground and begging. Surprised by this level of intensity, Rokuo asks why they are so desperate to keep the club alive, questioning if they are truly that passionate about stars, or if there is a special reason. Meguri confesses that it isn't just about astronomy. They all have their own, less than pure motives. Nito explains her reason first. She plays the piano and sings, posting her original songs online under the name Nito, spelled with all caps. She wants to keep the club so she can use the music room's old piano for her content. Curious, Rokuo looks her up on his phone and is genuinely impressed to see her channel already has 50,000 views, praising her songs as awesome. Rokuo then turns to Monae, asking for her story. She explains that she wants to build a new kind of relationship with Nito. She admits that although they have always been close, she recently realized her attachment had become an unhealthy dependency, marked by jealousy and possessiveness. Instead of distancing herself, she followed Meguri's advice to join the club and explore a healthier dynamic alongside her best friend. Nito listens thoughtfully, understanding Monae's feelings. Finally, Rokuo asks Meguri for his motivation. Meguri reiterates his genuine goal of becoming an astronomer in the future, which drives his interest in the club. However, he reveals there is one more reason. This triggers a memory for Meguri, taking him back to a moment in his messy room where he watched an exclusive interview with the popular artist Nito on a screen. Meguri's mind flashes back to the interview he watched in his original timeline, uncovering the secret behind the prodigy who kept producing hit after hit. He remembers the days of his own youth when he gave up on everything, believing his dreams were beyond reach. He recalls the momentary sense of freedom that followed, only to be replaced by a slow, creeping regret as he faced exams and the future. He spent those days in aimless self-indulgence, laughing at his own paralysis, unaware that the path led to Nito's death. A future no one wished for, and the absolute worst outcome. Returning to the present conversation with Rokuo, Meguri finishes his explanation. He states that there is one more reason, though it is personal. There is someone he wants to protect, or rather, something he desperately wants to change. Rokuo nods, sensing where he is coming from. He quietly mutters the name, Chika. Nito responds to her first name, asking what is wrong, but Rokuo dismisses it as nothing. Smiling, he suddenly announces that he should join the club. Meguri is shocked, but Rokuo confirms that if he joins, they will finally meet the member quota. Meguri calls it a generous offer, but asks why he would go so far. Rokuo explains that he has his own ambitions. He plans to start a business in the future, which means he will need to work with all sorts of people, not just friends he gets along with. He sees the astronomy club, a group of very different individuals who respect one another, as the perfect environment to prepare for that challenge. He asks if that reason is enough. Relieved, Meguri assures him it is more than enough, reminding him that they all have less than pure motives. He shakes Rokuyo's hand, officially welcoming him to the astronomy club. With that, the club successfully secures enough members to survive. Later that night, Nito calls Meguri. She apologizes for the late hour, checking if he was asleep. Meguri says he was just chilling. They discuss the surprising turn of events regarding Rokuo joining the club, and Meguri sincerely thanks her for all her help. Nito laughs, telling him he is welcome. Hearing her voice through the phone in the quiet of the night, Meguri detects a tinge of seductive allure that makes him nervous. Nito seems to catch on to his agitation, but shifts the topic to something serious. She brings up what he told Rokuo earlier, about wanting to protect someone and change something. She admits those words struck a chord with her. Her tone turns sharp as she asks Meguri directly if he is hiding something from her and keeping a secret. He panics, terrified that Nito has deduced his secret about the time leap. He remains nervous and silent, prompting her to ask if the cat got his tongue. As she presses him on whether she hit the mark, Meguri's train of thought shifts. He wonders if the secret she is referring to is actually his feelings of love for her. Embarrassed, he takes a deep breath and confirms she is right. Nito laughs and offers to guess the secret explicitly, but Meguri stops her. He tells her that he would rather say it himself when the time is right, asking her to wait until then. Understanding the implication, Nito blushes and hides her face in her pillow, quietly agreeing to wait. Before hanging up, she asks if he has any plans for Sunday. The next day, Meguri stands outside a building, fidgeting and worrying about whether his clothes look weird. Nito arrives and thanks him for waiting. Meguri is momentarily stunned by her appearance. When she asks what is wrong, he admits that it feels fresh seeing her in casual clothes. Nito points out that he already saw her casual side when he visited her room, but Meguri quips that back then, his eyes were too focused on the mess to notice her outfit. The reason for their meeting is revealed. Nito explains that Manase, the famous blogger she mentioned previously, wants to meet Meguri. Apparently, Nito spoke about him, sparking the blogger's curiosity. Meguri realizes this is a stroke of luck. Meeting Manase is the catalyst for Nito's rise in popularity. He resolves to judge Manase's character carefully to understand why Nito was eventually driven into a corner in the original timeline. Inside the restaurant, Manase greets them, and Nito expresses what an honor it is to meet her. Observing her, Meguri notes that Manase gives a different impression in person than in photos. Rather than the beautiful type, she appears more cute and charming. He finds it hard to see her as a charismatic producer, but reminds himself not to judge a book by its cover. Manase begins discussing the state of the industry. She argues that magazines no longer function as they once did, making it difficult for people with shared creative goals to find one another. Consequently, she believes it is becoming increasingly hard for alternative cultures to emerge. Nito nods along, saying she understands, though Meguri notes that he didn't grasp a single thing she said. Manase explains her vision. She created a new office to serve as a hub where thoughts and talents can be broadcast to the world, allowing creators with shared goals to collaborate. She formally invites Nito to become their first affiliated creator. Nito is shocked by the offer. Meguri, observing the interaction, is overwhelmed by Manase's passion and drive. He becomes convinced that under her guidance, Nito will undoubtedly become a national artist, making the meeting well worth the effort. Nito excuses herself to go to the washroom, leaving the two alone. The atmosphere turns awkward for Meguri. Manase breaks the silence by asking Meguri what he thinks of her, noting that he has been observing her the entire time to see if she passes his test. Realizing she saw right through him, Meguri apologizes. Manase dismisses the apology and shifts the topic, stating that she knows he likes Nito. When Meguri admits it with a smile, she asks him to look after her. She explains that although Nito looks fine, she is actually a very delicate person. Manase warns him that the entertainment industry is cruel and often crushes young people. She promises to do everything she can to support Nito professionally, but asks Meguri to support Nito in her private life, which might become difficult. Meguri agrees to the responsibility. Manase smiles, asking him to keep this conversation a secret from Nito. Seeing her expression, Meguri thinks that Manase is actually quite similar to Nito. The next day in the staff room, Chiyoda-sensei accepts their paperwork, commending them for recruiting second years. Meguri laughs hesitantly, relieved that the club can continue. However, Chiyoda then asks for their activities report, explaining that school rules require records of competition participation or research publications to maintain club status. Meguri is confused, having prepared no such thing. Back in the club room, Meguri scatters books across the table in frustration. Realizing the previous members did absolutely nothing worthy of a report last year, he apologizes to the group, blaming himself for the oversight. Nito reassures him that it isn't his fault, as none of them were aware of the rule. Rokuo steps in, calmly asking when the deadline is. Meguri informs the group that the deadline is only 2 days away. Moan frantically checks her phone for any upcoming competitions they could enter, but Meguri shakes his head. He has already searched, and there are no competitions available for astronomy clubs. Seeing the mood dampen, Nito suggests they call it a night and go home, reasoning that they all need cool heads to come up with a solution. Back at home, Meguri berates himself for his carelessness. He is frustrated that he missed such a crucial rule and jeopardized the club. Trying to push past the regret, he analyzes the situation. They need a record of competition participation or a research publication within 48 hours. It seems impossible given the time constraints. Suddenly, a realization strikes him. Time is relative. He realizes that if he jumps back to 2023, he can take as long as he needs to think without wasting any time in the past. Furthermore, he can consult the future Makato, who knows the situation and might offer a solution. However, a major flaw in the plan quickly emerges. He needs a piano to trigger the leap. Since he cannot break into the school at this hour, and waiting until morning cuts it too close, he feels stuck. Just then, he hears a voice call out, "I am home." It is his sister, urging a guest not to hold back and to come inside. Meguri looks up and is stunned to see the guest's face. Standing in his entryway for a sleepover with his sister is none other than the younger version of Makato from 3 years ago.
Here I am.